This is Soccer 101 with Moon and Rocchio.
Welcome back to Soccer 101. I'm Moon and that's Rocchio. A little bit to talk to you about, Rock. Last week, 2 weekends ago, we beat the last place in the West San Jose Earthquakes and then came back to City Park to play KC, our rival. And honestly, at that point, the team was still mathematically alive. But I think everybody really, in the sold-out stadium again, was just wanting to hammer a win out of the derby and hammer some rivals that we knew were probably also going to be eliminated with us. I think actually Kansas City was eliminated going into the match.
Yeah, Kansas City had already been eliminated. They that was one of the few feathers in the cap for a St. Louis City fan this year is Kansas City did get eliminated before St. Louis City did. Yeah,
before us. So we went into the weekend mathematically alive, and we'll just get it out of the way. We came out with a win. Yeah, we came out with a win, but Minnesota did as well, therefore eliminating us from the playoff picture. So we'll just do a little match recap. City earned a second straight win, which was lovely. Nice. San Jose and then KC. At City Park, that was also lovely. Teuchert, man, the dude, he's so good. He's so good.
He's a monster.
He is a monster, and he's fun to watch. He opened the scoring in the 33rd. That was his 5th goal of the season. St. Louis was up 1 at the half. Now there were a couple opportunities for KC. A little bumble from Berkey and a couple other opportunities. I believe KC actually ended the night with more shots than City did.
Don't care.
But yeah, it doesn't matter. And then another goal in the 54th from Rasmus Alm, which was again. Teuchert just on fire, being where he should be. I mean, just at the right place, at the right moment, on a ball that Klauss had kind of set up from a bomb from Berkey.
I love that play by Klauss so much.
Klauss had the play, and at the same time, you're sitting there watching, stressing out, going, God, is Klauss going to almost get something and then lose the ball again? And Teuchert almost in a weird way kind of took it from him. Like I said, was in the right spot at the right time, crossed it over. Alm just ducks it in, and wow, what a beautiful goal. And then KC was just allowed to respond. I hate to say it any other way than that, but it was a great shot, but he just kind of had it from Afrifa. And then Leuven actually kind of put it away 3-1 on a really, really tasty ball that he lovely just dropped to his foot on a one-touch and just tucked into the corner from about 20 yards, maybe 19 yards out, which was really pretty. So, listen, It was really nice to walk away with 3-1 victory. I watched the replay the following day because I had a show that evening and wasn't able to see any of it. You were at the match. How did it feel at the match, knowing that same night we had been eliminated and, KC's not a real opponent as far as any sort of chase goes? How did it feel in the stadium?
I mean, I think getting the win over the rivalry was a big deal, and everyone felt that. And if you heard the quotes coming out of the team beforehand, Berkey talked about how these rivalry games have felt like Schalke games when he was on Dortmund. And these players talked about this rivalry being real, and John Hackworth talked about how he's been getting stuff from his biking club and how it doesn't matter and how they might be mathematically eliminated or most likely eliminated, and they're probably not going to go to the playoffs. But for him, as a guy who wants to have this job long term, winning a rivalry game like this mattered to him. And so clearly I think when he saw the way the players played and their reaction afterwards, it was a real thing, and they gave it their all, and it was an impressive victory. And I think we saw one of the most impressive goals of the entire season from Edward Leuven, and probably the easiest goal from Rasmus Alm. Statistically, it actually was the easiest goal for a City player to score this year. Was a .83 xG on just that one shot from Rasmus Alm. But obviously the setup from Klauss, the long ball from Berkey that gets it there in the first place, the fake header, is able to pick up the ball. Teuchert, like you said, Johnny on the spot, right where he needs to be. Perfect little back pass, and then Alm's right there. And then, of course, like you were talking about earlier, the Leuven goal was impressive. His placement, the fact that Teuchert gets in the ball in there, the transition at parts of the game was impressive. I really did come away pretty happy with this team, and there were a lot of things to say listen, there's positivity going into 2025, despite the fact that we are kind of capping off the disappointment by being mathematically eliminated. And I think if you go back and you watch the post-game press conferences, I think that's exactly the message you got from coach and the players who spoke after, which is there's a lot of reasons to be hopeful considering what we just did out there, but also, the reality that we just got mathematically eliminated does kind of suck.
Yeah, one of the positives is not only is this a rivalry because obviously, cross-state rivals, derby match here, but, KC was the one that punched the wind out of us last year. And it's nice that this year...
There are a bunch of litigious babies with the cease and desist on the podcast name to start last year. They're a bunch of babies. They knocked you out of the playoffs, so on and so forth. There's no reason to like them.
Yeah, well, we beat them 3 games this year. I believe the goal difference was 11-2. So we outscored KC 11-2 this season in those 3 matches. So that's good. That's a nice feel. There's not too many other great stats that are in our pockets from this season. Now, speaking of stats, for those that aren't stat heads, Rocc, you said something about negative XG forces and whatever. Explain. What is that? What are you reading?
Rasmus Alm had a 0.3 XG on his shot. So XG is essentially it's both a real and kind of a predicting model, which is when you take everything into account, all the variables into a shot, where the ball's being shot from, where the goalie's at, where the defenders are. When you take in all those variables, every shot that's taken gets a numerical value of how likely it is to be a goal. Now, obviously, the 1.00 is a goal. There are very few shots ever taken that give you an XG of like 0.99. So it's relative to how likely any shot taken should be a goal relative to all the variables around you. So a 0.83 XG shot it tells you essentially it's not an actual 1-to-1, but it's essentially an 83% chance is how you can think about it. Out of 1,000 shots that Rasmus Alm would have there, he should hit it 83% of the time, is essentially what it's saying. And that is statistically the highest XG on one shot by a City player this entire season. And the reason why the XG is so high is because the ball's right there, the goalie's out of position, the defenders, no one's around him. And when you have those variables, it gives you an extremely high XG. If you go into these games and you look at a shot chart, you can see every single shot will have an XG. A shot from 30 yards out against a packed-in defense you'll see it on an XG chart, will have like a 0.02 XG. Essentially saying, if we want to do the incongruent comparison, in 1,000 shots, in 100 shots from that spot, you have a 2% chance of scoring a goal with that shot. So made so that we can have this conversation as broadcasters and fans and try to explain it a little better. Instead of just saying, well, that's a bad shot by Leuven, I can tell you that's a 0.02 XG shot from Leuven. If Leuven's taking it, I like it because he'll hit it every once in a while. But absolutely no one else on this team should ever get away with taking a 0.0x2 shot. Or you can just look at the totality of a game like we always do. And this is a common one. I don't think it's wrong. I think it's a good, simple way to look at a game. If you score, again, I already used the numbers. I'm just going to use it again. If you score 4 goals, but your XG is 1.86, then you shouldn't be walking away from that game saying, man, 4 goals, we're an incredible offense. You need to walk away from that game saying, maybe we score 2 today. How do we get better? Because the numbers, again, it's never should be 1-to-1. This will happen every time. It's extrapolation. Across 1,000 games, if you keep having a 1.86 XG, you will score between 1 and 2 goals more often than not across a large scale thing. So I'm not saying it's the end all be all. Never use analytics as the end all be all. It's a quick thing to get the conversation moving and to back up your argument. I saw this. Here's a stat that says I'm not crazy. That's how it should be used, in my opinion. Rasmus Alm's shot was the easiest shot, I think, or easiest goal we've seen from the entire St. Louis City this season. I tweeted it in the moment that is the easiest goal St. Louis has scored this season. And then Tom Timmerman went and checked the XG, and it's the highest XG from a single shot. And so that right there is simply your eyes telling a story that the numbers then 100% back up. It was statistically the easiest goal a City player has scored the entire season. That's a fun way to see how the eyes and the stats can match up sometimes.
I love it. Well, let's move on. And you mentioned the word conversation, and that's a good topic to move into, because right now we're talking about the offseason because we've been eliminated. The Cardinals are now in the offseason, and what are we talking about? We are having conversations about names. Who's coming back, who doesn't need to be coming back, why, and all the arguments. And the big conversation that you said is happening online, and apparently Twellman was talking about it on the broadcast. Now, like I said, you were at the match. I was at a concert. So we didn't hear what Twellman said, but apparently it sparked a big conversation online about the value and the interest of Sir Klauss, João Klauss, being on this team. I kind of know where I land on this conversation, but remind me and tell the audience what Twellman said, because this isn't the first thing Twellman said about Klauss.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Taylor was critical of the system at the end of last year, and he was 100% right. He went on Tim McKernan's show on 101 ESPN, Balloon Party, and he did a weekly hit last year. And in like the 6 weeks leading up to the playoffs and in the playoffs, he said, this system's a little bit broken. If a team forces City to play with the ball, City kind of falls apart. And again, I'm simplifying what he said. But and that's what he said about going into the Kansas City game, is if Peter Vermes just gives City the ball and asks City, okay, now you guys go play with the ball and see what happens, City's going to fall apart. And he was right. City, until like the last 20 minutes of the second leg of that playoff match, when Celio Pompeu got subbed in and started just like carrying the ball up and doing a bunch of stuff himself, City was broken for 150 minutes of that 180 minutes across that playoff matchup. They were broken. Taylor was completely right. And he said it even this year. He's not the biggest fan of a heavy pressing system that doesn't have the possession back behind it, and that doesn't have some possession behind it, because you're never going to have high possession. And so people are annoyed by him being critical of City, which is ridiculous. I don't care that he's from St. Louis. His job is to say, this is what I see in front of me. I don't care who's playing for it. The fact that he's critical or has any criticisms of City doesn't change the fact that he loves St. Louis and he's very proud of what the team has done here. I don't know why I have to say that, but again, my Twitter was turning into a time machine back in like 2012 when people hated Joe Buck because they thought he hated the Cardinals. And it was like, okay, well, this is the dumbest conversation we've ever had. Why do I have to do this again 15 years later with another St. Louis native turned broadcaster? It's ridiculous. That's dumb. But back to the other thing. So people were – so he's been critical at times of the Lutz's pressing system, and he's been critical of a lack of goal contributions from your number 9 in João Klauss. I was not aware of that as much. I know, again, I know that he's been critical of St. Louis City at the time, and why wouldn't he be? They had 4 wins going into Saturday night. How could he not be critical of them? So I sent out a tweet, and this has all to do with my Twitter interactions with fans over the last few weeks and this entire season about João Klauss. And as in my opinion, João Klauss is having a great game, and it's a game where he ends up not even having a shot, but I thought he was impactful. And so I tweeted out, just a calamitous night for the number 9 DP who doesn't score goals is useless crowd. They're in absolute shambles as Klauss gallivants around every part of the pitch, making an impact and changing aspects of the game. Somebody responded to me and asked if I was talking about Twellman with that tweet. Again, I wasn't listening to the broadcast because apparently he was criticizing Klaus's production this season from the 9 spot. Again, I wasn't listening to the broadcast. Taylor says on Twitter, because the tweeter said that Taylor was talking S all game long. Taylor responds, "Talk S is really strong. They've scored the second fewest goals at home. Your 9 has 5 goals in his last 30 appearances for the club. In a league where DPs have to hit, there is a legit debate with that level of impact. Tonight he was good, but your team isn't in the playoffs. So how do you not want to talk about it? That would be ignorant, and trust me, Lutz and co have noticed. If he plays, then you must get 20-plus goals from your wingers. Will this team do that?" I think that is a completely logical argument. And as somebody who has a different opinion, I think that is 100%. Everything he said there is true. Klaus's production has not been enough. The reason why I sent out the tweet I did is because when you look at, to me, since Klauss has returned from his injury, he has been playing a very non-traditional type of striker. I would call it a false nine because he's playing back in the midfield. He's pressing all the way into your own defensive box. Then he's making passes out of your own defensive third before he then eventually makes his way back into his striker position where he then attacks like a regular number 9 for a little bit before he goes out to the wing. He just does all these different things. And I've been a fan of it because I think it fits his skill set, which is he's a good progressive passer. He's a good progressive dribbler. He's a very good presser. He's a good defender. He's not the most accurate passer, and he takes too many bad chances, which is why he has a low pass percentage. But he doesn't finish at a hugely high rate. So I think I just think that his passing and his pressing and his progressive dribbling is as good, if not better, than his finishing at times. And so therefore put him in a position where he can use those things to put other people in positions to succeed. And I think you look at what Taylor Twellman said, because I have no problem if you agree with Taylor. Again, Taylor played this game. Taylor knows more about soccer than I will ever know. He's forgotten more than I will ever know. My point, though, is his last point here. That would be ignorant, and trust me, Lutz and Co. have noticed. If he plays, then you must get 20-plus goals from your wingers. Will this team do that? And my argument to Taylor would be, I believe they're trying to build a team that would. I believe they're trying to build a team that when they, for the majority of a season, are able to put out Cedric Teuchert, Marcel Hartel, Rasmus Alm, Celio Pompeu, and Simon Bescher as a 5-man unit in different times around Klauss in a rotation, I believe they can get those 20-plus goals from that group without needing Klauss to be the main goal scorer. That's what I think. And that's what Taylor thinks. And again, our arguments were completely separated from one another, but because of some crazy fans on Twitter, they got kind of brought together. And I think Taylor has a great point.
So you're saying Klauss is great for this system as long as nobody gets injured and everything works out as it should.
Well, I mean, you have 5 guys. I mean, there's going to be injuries, but that also ignore. I mean, Thomas Ostrak seemed like he was really working into the system. He's a guy who was a winger who then showed up as playing some center mid. I think if you think about that kind of thing, if Klauss is dropping back pressing extra, then Thomas Ostrak can get forward in the field. That's why I think that Klauss is an interesting player, because when you ask a question about a Thomas Ostrak, I say, well, he can attack different spots of the field because Klauss does different things than a normal 9 would. And again, this isn't just my opinion. I'm basing this opinion on my expectations of what will happen, because when you listen to John Hackworth talk after the game, he talks about Seti and he talks about Klauss. I asked him even Klauss. I go, how good was Klauss tonight even though he didn't register a shot as your number 9? And he talked about the fluidity and the mobility and being able to change positions.
Yeah, I keep telling you, I like this fluidity and mobility. I like the interchanging of positions, and I really think that's something that these guys enjoy doing too. And you can kind of tell when we get going in a good way, they're having fun. And when you're playing at this level and you still enjoy it at the level that they're doing it, I think we see some positive performances coming out. And when we do that, and a key play like, a little combination between those guys gives us a little more confidence that we can go and get the next opportunity to penetrate and go find the next goal. Yeah, Klauss was good, wasn't he? Yeah, it was nice.
Does it help with that fluidity to have?
Of course. And you see, when I'm talking about like the joy of playing, like you could see Klauss having fun tonight. You could see him combining. Of course, he likes to bang a little bit, but at the same time, it was just fun. I know I was probably yelling at the assistants saying, clip that out, clip that out, clip that out. Well, now I have a lot of clips to choose from to show that fluidity and that mobility that we had. It was nice.
And I think, in addition, that you found the perfect combination with Klauss and Cedric Teuchert. He was referred to as a 9.5 by John Hackworth, and I think that even more so than Nico Gioacchini last year, I think Cedric Teuchert is a perfect complement to Klauss, because when Klauss is out on the wings doing his thing, Cedric's in the middle waiting to score a goal. When Klauss is tracking back doing his thing, Cedric's up in the attack waiting to be the spearman of the attack. When Klauss is still up in the front, pressing a goaltender or a center back, Cedric Teuchert's right next to him, pressing the other center back or the goalkeeper. He is the perfect complement. And I really think that's why. If you asked me this question, if we had this discussion in June, I would have a completely different reaction. But looking at the last few games since Klauss returned, especially with Marcel Hartel, Cedric Teuchert, and Edward Leuven all healthy, I think it can work.
Yeah, a couple things. I know what you're saying. First, Twellman, I think, hit it on the nose. Like, I think that was the perfect way to say all of that. It can kind of stop everybody in their tracks when they're trying to push on what Twellman said on air, most likely. But, you know, and there's a couple things. I understand it. Initially, when you started talking and defending your points and everything, I'm thinking, okay, this is Matt Rocchio sitting in the press box watching the game live. And I will say, it is a completely different experience when you watch live than when you watch the broadcast, because the camera can only be on so much of the field.
100%. You're absolutely right.
And typically, when you are watching in person, the few matches that I've been to over in Europe and everything, like, I was blown away with how different my understanding of some of the strikers was after watching them live than watching them for years on broadcast. Because I'd be like, oh, you know, this guy isn't effective, or he didn't score in the last couple of months, and I'm not seeing the effectiveness. And when you see him in person, there are certain players where you're like, holy cow, this dude's just his presence, whether he's pulling defenders over here or he's pulling some of his midfielders over there. There can be a huge effectiveness without tallies on the goal sheet. So I understand what you're saying there, and I'm thinking, okay, this is Rocchio in person versus Twellman on broadcast, right? And there can be a massive difference in what you're seeing. But what Twellman says that goes even against what Matt Rocchio is always talking about is the stats. So I feel like you're usually talking about the stats. You're usually talking about the goal sheets and the tallies and all that kind of stuff.
He's right on the numbers.
You just talked for 5 minutes with your heart. We just heard Matt Rocchio's heart, and he loves João Klauss. And I understand what you're saying, and I think you have some defendable points if you're talking about surrounding him into a different system with everybody being healthy. But, dude, if he doesn't show up either on the goal tally or we're not in the playoff picture with other people's goal tallies, I don't think it's worth having him around because it doesn't work. So here's my question. When's the next what's his contract, and when's the next transfer window? Because I got a feeling if we're struggling 5 matches in to next season, we're going to be talking about this real seriously.
Well, next transfer window is the winter transfer window, so you have this offseason to make some moves, and then things don't open up until July of next year. So you got, like you always do, you got a winter and you got a summer.
Yeah, well, then we'll be talking about this just before the summer if he isn't delivering or if the team isn't in top 5 on the Western side. Just because he is the DP, and at some point you do have to put this at the foot of your DP striker if goals aren't coming either from him or everyone else.
Right. Klauss is not scoring enough for a true number 9. And yeah. My thing is, what if he's not a true number 9? Like, what if he's just not? What if that is not the best way to play him? And that's my entire theory. Like, we could have boiled all this conversation down to just everyone says I want Klauss to be a true number 9, and my answer to that is, but what if that's not the best way to play him?
Well, then we better find out what the best way to play him is, or that next summer window is gone.
And part of this is with the reports, Moon, on Friday, that the 2 favorites right now for the St. Louis City job, or two of the main people being looked at for the St. Louis City job, and this is according to a report from Tom Bogart on X, are Danny Cruz, who is the current head coach of Louisville City in the USL, and the other person other than Danny Cruz is the guy who Danny Cruz took over for, John Hackworth. So there's a chance John Hackworth is the head coach next season. And so we have to start looking at 2025 as how much of what is happening right now is informing us of what's going to happen in 2025 and what the plan is for 2025. And right now, my best guess for what they want the offense to look like is fluidity, mobility, and Klauss doing what he's done the last few games.
Yeah, I don't know, man. If you're going to boil down the last couple months, I only have 2 syllables, and it's Teuchert. And then if I had to expand on that, the only thing I would say is, man, I really miss Pompeu now.
I'm with you. But in Teuchert's not a 9. Hackworth, he says he's a 9.5. So it's not like
it's
not like they're going to replace.
I'm just talking about what I've experienced. I've experienced as a fan.
He's been incredible.
It can boil down to Teuchert. He's the only thing that's like saved even like a smirk on my face about this season.
Hartel?
Is, oh, cool. At least we're coming out. Yeah, Hartel too. But I'm just saying, like if I had to boil it down to one thing that like has me going into the off season as like I mean, there's some positive.
There's a bunch of things for me, man. I'm surprised you're being so
yeah.
negative.
No, I'm not being negative. I'm just saying I wish we were talking more about Klauss in a good way, because he was supposed to make such an impact when he came back from this injury, and it's been a little.
He was
bit
great
slow.
on.
Let's talk about.
He was fantastic on Saturday. What are we talking about? I'm talking about Klauss in a great way.
Yeah, again, you saw him. You saw him in person, and I think there's a lot to be said for that for the fans that have not seen him in person.
Yeah, that's fair.
He is effective on the field. He is pulling a lot of weight around,
really
even
point.
if he's not throwing numbers around.
That's a really good point.
Well, let's look towards the future. This week we have LAFC, who is second in the West right now behind LA Galaxy. I think they have a game in hand on the Galaxy, but they're still a few points back. So they're fighting for that top position there. LAFC they're freaking good, dude. This is going to be a match. We're going to their hometown. Their home stadium and BMO Stadium. That is on Wednesday. And then Saturday, just a few days later, we take on Houston back here at City Park. Now, Houston, in the table, is in the playoffs. They are holding 6th right now. They do not have a game in hand, but they are solidly, through to the playoffs. So everybody's kind of playing to kick our ass because they think that they should. So there's a lot of pride on the line, and I'm really curious to see what we do this week as far as the mix-up of players, any sort of formation changes, because we do have 2 games in 4 days here, in 3 days, on the 2nd and on the 5th. And then there's a bye week after that, and then we finish out the season on the 19th at Minnesota United.
I'm going to throw out some things for you. Let it percolate in the brain, and then you kick out your some thoughts on what you think might be the changes. So, Durkin and Indy are questionable. They did not practice today, so I'm not expecting Durkin or Indy to really be available for Wednesday. Nielsen, he's looked good, and I think we're looking at 45 for Nielsen. He was the player that spoke in the pregame presser this afternoon. And usually that's a sign that the player plays, if not starts. So those are 3 things for you to throw into your brain really quick. And the other thing is, John Hackworth said that they usually have 2 hard training sessions during like a regular week, like ones where they actually where they try to wear the guys out. They're not going to have those this week because of the schedule. So he says that they expect that these guys, being pro athletes, should be able to play 3 games in 8 days because they don't have those 2 hard training sessions that they usually have. So, with those 4 pieces of information in your brain now, Moon, what kind of changes would you like to see relative Wednesday and Saturday?
If we were still in the race here, I would think that we wouldn't see all that many changes, but I think this is the time. This is the time to kind of see what happens.
Again, we're not in a race. The team's not in a race. But the man drawing up the lineup card is. Think about that. You can't forget that part. The guy drawing up
that
the
is
lineup.
A great point.
The guy drawing up the lineup card is
right.
100% in a race.
You're right. This is not video. This is not FIFA. This is not video game soccer. You're right. Hackworth has something to prove here.
Yeah.
So you're right.
He's got some career ambitions.
So we're not going to see a Klein start. We're not going to see. I don't think we're going to see a Betcher start. I would. Man, hate to say that I would like to, but yeah, maybe some more minutes for Klauss. I'm sure.
I think we'll see a lot. I think we'll see a lot of Bescher, because having Bescher and
you think
Klauss.
A half?
Yeah, maybe not a half. Maybe a harder 60-minute pull on Klauss, just because I think you want to have those guys. You want to have somebody at that spot always not in the red, because you need him to run and press all over the field.
Yeah, Nielsen will probably pull in there, and then JGR is probably going to pull in there, like you said, if there's some injury worries. I'd expect not that many changes.
Yeah, I'd expect another start for Akil Watts in the center midfield, which with the way John Hackworth was talking about him today, called him a baller.
In person,
to get that one again.
In person, how did you feel about Totland? How did he look?
He was solid again.
Okay.
He covered a very good amount of ground. I really liked their defensive formation against Sporting Kansas City. Now, part of that is that Sporting Kansas City didn't do a very good job of actually taxing the back line, except for about a 15-minute spot there where they got their goal, and things got a little wonky for a minute. which again seems to be City's Achilles heel. Those 15 minutes have doomed them in a lot of other games, and so that let's not ignore it either. Those 15 minutes where things got wonky and they were letting things up again, despite having the game kind of locked in for a while. That popped up again, and that was a little problematic. So I thought Totland was good though. He usually covered a lot of ground, defensively solid. Still maybe gets caught looking into the middle and ball watching, and guys get a little bit behind him where you should be looking a couple times. There was one time I think where I was watching him because it looked like he might have let a guy slip into the back post, but he recovered well. That's kind of been the big thing. That's been my big thing with the fullbacks lately is, again, when guys get behind them, it's usually not their fault. Usually they're pressing up high and somebody screwed something else up, and that's why there's so much space behind them. The big thing with the fullbacks that has gotten them benched from Hackworth has been them screwing up defending inside their own box when it's like a free kick and stuff on back posts, or when it's static defending when they've been in their own defensive end for like a minute and a half and there's no reason you shouldn't be able to man mark your guy and then he gets free on the back post. Those are the moments that get the fullbacks benched, not the ones where they're pressing up super high and there's a cavern of space behind them and the ball gets in behind them. That's not their fault. Those are the moments, the back posts in the static defending in your own box, that's what you need to watch for, and I think Totland was better. Speaking of defense, it's going to have to be a lot better. Obviously, not blow things on Wednesday. LAFC is the best counterattacking team in the league, as John Hackworth called them earlier today. They have been struggling since the restart post-Leagues Cup. They have 1 win, they have 3 losses, and they have 2 draws. And so they have not been as clinical. And specifically, Bouanga and Boguts, who have been 2 of the best attackers in the entire season, have only scored, I think Boguts has a goal and assist in the last 5 games, and Bouanga has just 2 goals. And so those guys have slowed down. LAFC's slowed down a little bit, and I think that's the main thing is, can you not get bit by their counterattack? Now, of course, Moon, does that scare you as somebody who's watched City at all this year?
Yeah, everything scares me. That's the problem. But I was going to say, on these matches, and again, on this last one, what'd they do on the kickoff? As soon as the whistle blew, they went forward.
I forgot to ask about it again.
And it was freaking great to see. I was like, yes. And it looked like it was going to be a chippier game than it ended up being. It was still a rival game. It
started off chippy as hell.
It started off that way, and I was like, this is what we need.
Yeah,
this is what we need. And that's what I would love to see against LAFC, except for all the stats, like you said, show that they are a heck of a counterattacking team, and I don't want to get us blown out because we're trying to be super aggro with this team. Although I still think a cautious aggression, and I know that sounds ridiculous and oxymoronic.
Okay, I like that.
But I would say a prepared aggression. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Prepared for that counterattack, very aware that that's going to be their strength in this thing, but still saying, I refuse to play the game based on that. And still, I think the one thing that they would not be expecting, as far as LAFC goes, is any sort of intense aggression in a physical game coming from City. And I think that if we give them that, a very aggressive and very physical game, I think it may throw them enough where we're going to continue that bad slide for them in these last 7 matches, and may end up coming out with something unexpected. Now things have to go our way, and people have to play to their potential. But I would like to see that as far as strategy goes and just kind of out of the gate. We'll see what happens though. What do you think is going to happen?
I like that you said it that way because that's kind of how I framed some of my questions to Coach Hackworth earlier today, which was, one of the issues they had early in that Kansas City game, if you go back and watch it, was they kept getting pinned in their own area and they kept playing backwards and they were playing conservative, despite the fact that this team is never built to play conservative. Even if they're up 2-0, this team is not built to play conservative. And so he won. So he said everything changed against Sporting Kansas City when they started playing forward. And so you go up against a counterattacking team, and it seems like the idea would be let's play conservative this time. Let's not let them bite us. And John Hackworth didn't necessarily push back against that at all. So I do expect that his coaching will be, we are an aggressive team. We are a forward team. Let's still be a forward team. Part of that, though, is and he talked about this, and I'm going to post his full answer of this. I don't have the video now because the press was just a few hours ago, but I'm going to post the full video of this on our Rocc ESPN on X because I thought this was a great answer about defense. They need to make sure they have their numbers covered when it comes to the transition from offense to defense. They need to make sure that they have their numbers covered so they don't give LAFC a numerical advantage in the back end. And this is what I like. These are two things I wrote down because when he said them, I wanted to ask you about them. He talked about how the two things that are going to be so important are rest defense and the concept of defending in advance. And I was like, oh, that sounds like something Moon's talked about before. So apparently, according to John Hackworth, one of the big things against LAFC is going to be defending in advance and their rest defense. Moon, would you like to run with it from here, my friend?
Those are the basics for a defender. Your superpower is supposed to be unseen. It's supposed to be you playing chess, not checkers. And that's why defenders are the freaking heroes of the game. That's why we scream defense. That is the whole point. Chess, not checkers. As a good defender, you have to be scanning at all times and looking. And this is for anybody, really, any position. You have to be thinking, what are the 3 or the 4 things that could happen in any given moment. It's defensive driving. It's everything. You know, I'm teaching my teenagers how to drive right now, and one just got a license. And the whole thing is they're not allowed to get in the car until they say the 5 rules, and one of the 5 rules is defensive driving, and that is constantly looking around and going, okay, what's the worst case scenario for the next 3 to 18 seconds? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you prepare for stupid. And if you're prepared for stupid, you're safer. So, like, just be out here and prepare for a stupid opportunity, a stupid move. Oh, this ball bounced wrong and it could pop over here, and this guy's running in this direction, so here's the opportunities that his body and his inertia has, and this is how I'm going to stop it if that happens. Your mind should never, ever sit there long enough for your eyes to ball watch.
You know what, Moon? You're completely right, and you know what? I pulled up the phone here. Defensive driving describes the practice of anticipating dangerous situations despite adverse conditions or the mistakes of others when operating a motor vehicle. Man, Papa Moon 100% right the entire way. We'll cut out that part where I sounded like an idiot, and we'll just give all the credit to Moon. Defensive driving it is. That's the key. And I just love that from Hackworth. As soon as he said it, I jumped with it. I think the thing for me is knowing you have the numbers. Because, I mean, how many times have we talked about where I think it was just a couple episodes ago, we talked about where have we seen so many goals that City's allowed this year, and it's been times where if you pause the screen, there's 4 attackers and 3 City defenders because some dumb turnover has caught them high up in the field, and they somehow are outnumbered in their own box, which just should never happen. And so him talking about the numbers factor of always having numbers in transition ready so that you don't ever get accounted for where they have you outnumbered in your own attacking area. That's going to be huge. And honestly, I think, again, the way they play, that's not going to be on the fullbacks. That's going to be on Akil Watts playing the 6, staying a little bit more static than usual, and it's going to be on how much guys like Leuven, how much guys like Hartel, and how much whoever is playing the other side opposite Hartel, how much are those guys tracking back? Because when those guys track back and all 11 guys defend, this team is able to cover their numbers in transition. But when those guys stop tracking back and defending, usually huge pockets are opened, and that's when easy goals are scored against this team, especially against teams that are good at transition and counterattacking the way that we know LAFC is.
Well, I'm going to be texting you a whole bunch on the 3rd about the match because it is on the West Coast. That means it starts this Wednesday, 9:30 p.m. I am in bed by then, hopefully, with my 3 a.m. wake-up. So I will not be watching that, but, of course, it will be on the MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. Then on the 5th, here at City Park, 7:30 against Houston, and then on the 19th in Minnesota against Minnesota United with an 8 p.m. start. Again, everything on MLS Season Pass. Rocc, you got anything else?
Hey, let's close out the season strong, and if you want to argue about the Klauss stuff, join us on Twitter. We're having a very good old time.
Yes, we appreciate your anger. Bring that passion for some goal.